listen to a pretty alright podcast about wrestling, do ya?
Well, the natural lad, Jim Swag, has said time and time again that there's only one podcast that's the most decent and the most alright in the industry today.
And that's it's the Game Rage Wrestling Podcast. Welcome everyone to the most decent and the most alright wrestling podcast on the internet today. That is an indisputable fact. This is Game Rage Wrestling.
On a scale of 1 to 10, we are a solid fucking 5.
A solid, pretty alright is what we are. My name's Josh. I'm here today with good buddy Adam.
Yeah, I'm livid about, I think I hate Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah, fuck Hulk Hogan right now.
But
well, I mean, listen,
we'll get to that.
Again, this is shit that we already knew, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We're gonna open with that as soon as we do the plugs, all right? But here we go. If you'd like to listen to us talk about other things, you can go on YouTube and you can follow, like, comment, and subscribe Game Rage Magazine on YouTube.
At Game Rage Magazine.
Yeah. Additionally, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at TikTok, Instagram and TikTok. At Game Rage Magazine, Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag. You can follow Adam at All Gas No Trash Official on Instagram, and you can follow our good buddy Frank at anime_syndicate_podcast.
That is a true story.
It is indeed. Anyways,
it actually tracks.
It does track. I actually heard a thing the other day that if you listen to Game Rage Magazine, you're actually 40% more likely to track. So
that tracks for me.
Indeed. See? Proof is in the pudding. Anyways. Yes. This documentary, full disclosure, we already watched the whole thing. We're just doing this one episode at a time because fucking whatever. We're just trying to get more fucking legs out of it, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
But anyways, this so far in these first two episodes, they haven't revealed anything new.
No.
Pretty much everything has been already stuff that if you are a wrestling fan, you already knew this shit. And that's sort of indicative with this whole series in general, is it's just like all the fucking memes I saw of people saying about, oh man, I have to rethink to people about how I'm a wrestling fan and apologize to people. And I'm like, what do you mean? We already knew this shit. This thing was not groundbreaking. This didn't reveal any new information for the most part. So if you are a wrestling fan or have been for the last 20 or 30 years, this is nothing new.
Yeah, it was like treaded over even in that WCW.
Yes. There was 2 fucking episodes about WCW in this fucking thing. We didn't need it. But anyways, okay. So going back to the Hogan thing. Again, this is shit we already knew that Hogan did, right? That Hogan was... That's why this is the prime reason why Jesse Ventura hates Hulk Hogan is because he fucked him on the whole union thing. And if Hogan would have been a voice for the boys, the union thing likely would have happened.
And everybody would have benefited from it.
And everyone would have benefited instead of only Hogan benefiting in the end. Now, we already knew this stuff, right? But the reason why I say agree with you on like why I really hate fucking Hulk Hogan in terms of a person is because of the cavalier and the almost proud way in which he talks about being a bitch ass snitch, man.
Subverting an effort to have a union.
To help everyone. Like, he was so proud that he did that. And I'm like, man, you're a fucking asshole. Listen.
Considering the fact that they're on the road 7 days out of the week, pretty much the entire year.
That's all Jesse Ventura wanted to do, was to have him get decent wages, not have to work basically 360 days out of the year, and have health insurance.
Yeah, and also, I mean, shit, the fact that they only got paid when they wrestled.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Well, again, that's one of the things that I always was like 100% The reason why like a lot of these guys got addicted to pills and drugs was because of that fucked up nature of their business. Was because if you have a spot or you're close to getting a top spot, you have to keep wrestling. Because if you stop, you lose momentum. If you get hurt, you stop, you lose momentum, and then you're out, and then you're fucked.
Yep.
Now, today it's different because of all these guys that have killed themselves or died of drug problems or overdoses or just having habitual drug abuse and having problems. And the thing we talk about, like you talk that shit about Jeff Hardy, right? Like, or everybody talks about Jeff Hardy and how he was a drug addict and all this shit or whatever. Yes, that's true, but Jeff Hardy did some of the most fucking dangerous shit in professional wrestling, and he like pioneered it. Because Jeff Hardy was primarily the dude taking all the hits when they were getting tossed off of tables, tossed off of ladders, jumping off shit. I mean, he was taking the brunt of that punishment. And yes, he got addicted to drugs. Now, granted, people fucking have different levels of drug addiction. Yeah, I don't agree with him fucking coming to the ring and being like high as fuck or whatever and not able to wrestle. That's fucked. But to a certain point, the WWE did that to him. The WWF did that to him.
Not directly, but indirectly.
Indirectly, they did that to him. Because the fact that they didn't provide proper health care for people who weren't top guys, and these guys had to pay for it out of their own pocket, and also, if you didn't fucking wrestle, you weren't getting paid, so how the fuck are you going to pay for this shit? That's the catch-22 you were in. So there's a doctor that's on the staff. He writes you a prescription for some pills. Hell, you can go and get through the match, right? And then once you get through the match, you get through your 8 minutes, you take the pills, but then you think, fuck, man, now I got to go the next day until I wrestle again, and I'm in pain all the time. Eventually, you just take more pills, and you take more pills, and then you get into the problem where you're at right now, where you're addicted, right? So this does lend itself to this is carny shit. This is the way carnies treat their fucking people, right? Vince McMahon has always been and always will be a carny at heart, all right? He is white trash from a trailer park.
He's a white trash ringmaster.
Yes, that's exactly what he is. And that's just what he's always been. Vince McMahon it's always been about how much money he can make for himself, right? That's always what it's been about. Yes, he loves wrestling as the business, but if he loved the guys just as much...
Especially to build a business on the backs of other people, it's fucked up.
It is fucked up. And yeah, Vince McMahon, for the 40 years or 50 years he was in charge of the WWF, he was basically the final stop when everything creative, right? He was the guy who approved it. The buck stops with him.
But, I mean, it was mentioned in episode 1, too, that he was the person that knew how to market people. Like, he knew how to put people together. He also knew how to, he knew how to book, and he knew how to create characters.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, not to discredit.
Right, not to discredit him at all, but it takes two to tango. You can't get the guy over if the guy doesn't have talent to get over. So none of his plans would have worked if it weren't for the guys actually being talented and help and doing it. So that's the conundrum that we are in with as wrestling fans. Is this documentary was, I mean, you want to be sympathetic towards Vince McMahon and like, oh, whatever, like you think you'd want to be that way. But then obviously once you see how he was the last 50 years, then you're like, oh, fuck this guy. And again, we already knew this. Like, Vince McMahon is the fucking shitty character. Again, everyone always says the best wrestling characters, the best wrestling characters in history are the same guy. They just turn it up to 11, right? It's that same dude. You let Stone Cold Steve Austin go out and just be himself. You just turn it up to 11. You let The Rock go out and just kind of be himself. You dial it up to 11. Mr. McMahon as a wrestling character, that was who he is. Turned up to 11. Always has been, always will be. We already knew this. This whole documentary was essentially, its purpose was to expose that Vince McMahon, the character, or Mr. McMahon, the character, and Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the person, were a lot closer to being them being just who he was, right?
Yeah.
That's what the whole point of this thing is. As wrestling fans, we already know that. We already know that. Because the formula is there. We know the formula that always the best characters are the guy just allowing themselves to be themselves, and you turn it up to 11. Vince McMahon, that's who he is. It's just, it's turned up to 11. In some cases, it's not, because it's just who he is. In some cases, a lot of the weird sexual shit is just who he is.
Also, the part about not liking rich people and then him becoming a rich person and being an asshole.
Yeah.
I think he just really wanted to be that. As much as he says, this is just a character, it's like, well, why did you create a whole company where you're basically the czar or the dictator of that world where nobody, if you really say to yourself, I don't really want to be like the people that bullied me or made fun of me when I was a teenager or whatever.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to be in a situation where, I don't know if you want your employees to like you, but at the very least they respect you for being valiant or being commended for treating them right, like, or something along those lines, like a benevolent billionaire. You could have been that, but you opted to be a shithead.
Yeah.
So,
And
I don't know.
Look, we're never going to be billionaires with this, more than likely, but once we get to the, obviously, where we're hiring employees and whatnot, we don't need to make $1 billion salaries or whatever, right? We don't need to take away from our employees' salaries so that we can make more money, which is kind of, yes, to a certain extent, I guess he earned that by putting his house on as collateral and putting all this shit as collateral to put on WrestleMania, and like putting his own personal finances at stake, right? To put stuff up as collateral to get the money to make this shit happen.
I think that's where you can commend him as a professional as well, because the fact that he gambled on himself,
he did.
Succeeded. That's fair.
But at the very least, you should take care of the guys who fucking got you to the dance, right?
Well, he took care of Terry.
Yeah, and then it was funny when Terry fucking goes and squeals to the FBI or the fucking ATF or whoever the fuck it was, and then basically. What was funny is how Vince talks about how there was a fucking point where he was like, hey, this is, if you want to be done and go do movies, that's cool. Just make me one promise that you're never going to compete against me. And then he immediately goes and competes against him. And then is also testifying against him in court, essentially, during the whole steroid scandal. Which, God, that was another thing that really fucking didn't make sense. Why would the government give a shit about steroid use in professional wrestling?
Because it was the war on drugs.
Right, but they were cracking down on, that's when they started cracking down. Well, really, they didn't start cracking down on that. Technically, the government cracked down on steroid use in pro wrestling before they cracked down on steroid use in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
So how is it that shit, they cracked down on that? That was a full fucking 7 years or 8 years before they did the crackdown on the MLB.
Yeah.
And shit, that might have even been 10 years before they did the crackdown on the MLB.
Can you pull up the summary some real quick, just so we don't lose track of some of the things we talk about?
There we go. And so there was the drug scandal, which was it was like steroids and it was pills. It was the pain pills. And what was funny is I felt like the government was fucking stupid in trying to go after him for this shit, because the case they had against him was already fucked to begin with, because they had accused him of being the one that gave the shit out to the guys.
Yeah.
And obviously Vince McMahon's like, well, no, we had a doctor on staff, and if that guy was abusing the system, then well, I have nothing I can do about that. Sure, he could encourage him, hey man, give these guys whatever they need, that's what we're paying you for. But when it comes down to it at the end of the day, Vince McMahon isn't handing pills to these guys.
Yeah, he has plausible deniability.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how he got off. And so it also talks about WrestleMania 3. you know.
And also WrestleMania 2 being a blunder because they tried to do it in 3 different cities.
Yeah,
Well,
it was a clusterfuck. It was too complicated, and it just fucked itself, and that was whatever.
Then WrestleMania 3 came along.
Right, which was they were going to. I mean, WrestleMania 3 did like solidify Hogan as being like everyone knew who the fuck Hulk Hogan was after that.
And this is after Andre the Giant had already done movies and decided he wasn't going to come back until this thing happened, and he was seemingly on board.
Yeah, and Vince told him we're going to make so much fucking money on this, and he was like, yeah, okay, boss. So. And then they talk about the thing that it's carny shit because no one will ever know what the real number was. They talk about it was 93,000 people that filled the Pontiac Silverdome. Right. When they said really the attendance was probably closer to 60 or 70, like in actuality. But we'll never know what the actual number was.
I can't wait to the days they'll say 1 million.
Oh man, dude!
In 100,000 person
stadium.
Yeah, we sold it. We sold it out, guys. It's 1 million people in a 100,000 seat stadium. We just stacked bodies on bodies.
Yeah, oh yeah, we just stacked bodies on bodies. There was a basement. We fucking filled that up. You know, they were talking about how, we got into that whole thing about. Whatchamacallit, WWF and them declining and Hogan bailing and going to WCW.
Then they tried to fill the void with Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Lex Luger, and they're like, man, they didn't have the charisma that Hogan did. So they were trying to find the next fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is the part where I can't remember if this is the part before or after where they start talking about Bret Hart coming in, or is that the following episode?
I feel like that's the following episode. This one was heavily Bret Hart. It was heavily Bret Hart. Episode 3 was Bret Hart centric.
I just wanted to know. I wish I would have got a goddamn Bret Hart bingo card.
Oh man!
So you can call fucking Goldberg Bill Goldberg all the time.
Yeah, it's like, okay, he's gonna talk shit about Bill Goldberg, and he's gonna talk shit about how he was the best there is, when in fact he really probably wasn't. But we'll get into that next episode because that episode fucking pissed me off too.
That shit was funny as fuck, dude.
I mean, it was funny. Bret Hart will literally take every opportunity he can to talk shit about the WWF and Goldberg and everything. And so. Anyways, this episode though, it ended with basically like the whole Hogan and going to WCW and them starting to kind of get into the guaranteed contracts that Ted Turner was giving out. I'm back and I'm better than ever, which is funny because Ted Turner, a guy who had never been involved in wrestling other than like, oh yeah, he owned WCW for a while, but like he didn't run it. To bringing in Eric Bischoff, a guy who was really not in the business at all, to run the wrestling. And for them to essentially take care of the guys better than fucking what Vince was doing.
Yep.
That's why everybody left. Because everybody was getting more money. I just watched a thing that it was Buff Bagwell. He was talking about the most money he ever made being in a video game. And it was for the WCW versus NWO, like on N64. And he said he didn't even do anything. He didn't even know he was in the video game. And he said,
I got paid millions.
He gets a check, and it was for like 96 grand. It just shows. He says Lex Luger calls him, and he's like, hey man, he's like, did you open your mail? And he's like, no. And he's like, okay, go in there and get a check. He's like, oh, I knew payday was coming or whatever. And he's like, my paychecks were normally, I'd get them monthly. My paychecks were probably around, 30 grand or whatever. He's like 20 to 30 grand or whatever. And he's like, meanwhile, I'm living with these roommates and they're making not even that in a year. He's like, I'm getting that every bi-weekly, like 2 weeks or whatever.
Right.
So he's like, I knew it was payday. So he's like, I go. And he's like, I open the thing up and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, why is this fucking check like $96,000 or whatever? And he's like, did I not get paid? He's like, so he asked his girlfriend, he's like, hey, because his girlfriend was handling his money at the time. So he's like, hey, did I not get paid for like 3 weeks? And she's like, or 3 checks. And she's like, no. She's like, you get paid? He's like, what the fuck? And so she looks at it and she's like, oh, what's this logo at the top? And it's the THQ logo. He's like, who the fuck? So he calls him up and he's like, man, he's like, man, who the fuck is THQ? And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, it's the video game company. And he's like, oh, what? And he's like, yeah, we're in a video game. And he's like, really? They paid every wrestler that was in that video game $96,000 to be in the video, or whatever the number was. I think it was 96,000. It was something ridiculous like that. He's like, everybody got paid that amount of money to be in the video game. And so he was talking about that, and I'm just like, again, that's guys getting fucking treated right, you know? So
yeah, and then Vince McMahon talking about, it's not personal. It's not personal.
It's just business.
It's just business.
I think he says that more in the next episode.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
But Eric Bischoff takes it to him.
Yep.
He's like, all right, fine, fuck you. You fucked over AWA.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't say that directly, but he's like, well, he fucked all these other companies. He's basically stealing everybody's top guys. Well, I got WCW now. Let's see what we can do. And then we get the Monday Night Wars in the fall.
And he basically had an open checkbook from Ted Turner to do it. So he's like, cool, let's see what happens. And that's how you get WCW beating the WWF 83 weeks in a row, as Eric Bischoff says. And that's all a podcast name, 83 weeks. Because he's like, we beat WWE for how long? 83 weeks in a row. We beat them in the ratings. And we were the number one wrestling product in the world. Which is fucking crazy.
Yep.
So, anyways. All right, you got anything else to add to this one?
No, I don't actually.
All right, perfect. Well, anyways, thank you guys for listening. If you want to check out more of our shit, you can go follow us, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube at Game Rage Magazine. Follow us on Twitter/X at Game Rage Magazine. Or no, Twitter/X is at Game Rage Mag. Instagram and TikTok is at Game Rage Magazine. Follow Adam at All Gas No Trash Official on Instagram, and follow Frank at Anime_Syndicate_podcast on Instagram. All right, that does it for us. We'll catch you guys on the next one, where actually I think the next episode, I don't know if it's going to be, well, the next two episodes, one of them is going to be this next episode of Mr. McMahon, so it'll be episode 3. And then we're also going to have Bad Blood. We're going to review and talk about whatever happens at Bad Blood, so which is Saturday, October 5th. So stay tuned for that.
You'll get that at some point.
Yeah, it'll probably be like the next day or so after that. But anyways, all right, well, that'll do it for us. Catch you guys on the next one. That was another wonderful, amazing, powerful episode of the Game Rage Wrestling Podcast. And take it from me, ladies and gentlemen, the natural lad, Jet Swag. If there's one podcast, one show you should be listening to, that you should be absolutely grateful for, it's the Game Rage Wrestling Podcast. And one of the things you can do to show your appreciation for all the hard work and dedication that these boys put out day in, day out, just for you people, it's that you can go and you can subscribe and you can like and follow them on the Instagram and the TikTok at Game Rage Magazine. You can also follow them and like them and subscribe to them on the old Twitter, which I don't know what it's called now, but who cares? It's at Game Rage Mag there. Additionally, if you feel the need to really show your appreciation, which you should, then go to their website at www.GameRageMagazine.com and show us some love. Show them some love. And show some love for the natural lad, Jet Swag.